thing. He's rolling his eyes right now, folks. I stumbled across this French series of spy films that more recently are spoofs. I think the original ones are not spoofs. I'm going to come by the table, a bag of popcorn. So, Sean, are you going to be able to separate your GM knowledge from your player knowledge in this game? Is that how it's going?
I feel as though I'm a consummate professional at the table.
You couldn't just have the blast, like the da 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 da, and then you couldn't just do that.
I think we just covered it, though. Probably better.
Strap in, operatives. This is Go Bag, your all-access pass to modern-day RPGs, loaded with bullets, backstories, and a whole lot of bad decisions. And here are your mission leaders, Sean and Harrigan.
Hello, agents, assets, and operatives. This is Go Bag. I'm Agent Kelly.
And I'm Agent Harrigan. Good morning, Moneypenny. You're looking fantastic today.
That's a pretty good Connery, man.
Now, but I'll roll it out whenever you want. It's terrible, and I don't care.
I expect that to come out in every RPG that I run with you playing.
Connery?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that's going to happen. That's okay. I do dumb voices, you know it, but I can't limit it to just one bad quasi-Scottish accent.
Right. Go Bag, where we talk about espionage, tabletop role-playing games. Harrigan, starting off, do you want to share what you have been listening to, absorbing?
Over the last week, I can do that. I'll be quick because there's actually a bunch of things, so I'll talk about them all briefly. I think listeners might know that I've been diving into the Mission Impossible movies, trying to watch them in sequence. The streaming service I was watching them on just gave up the ghost at the end of September, and all the free versions are gone. So I got through Ghost Protocol, and I started Rogue Nation and did not finish Rogue Nation before. So we'll revisit this. I'm trying to watch them all in a row before I really sort of provide some feedback on them. But I will say it's really interesting to see. I think most people probably know this if they're fans of the series. They started off with like meaning to have like auteur directors kind of thing, a different director in each movie, right? Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, Brad Bird for the first like 4 movies. And for that reason, the tone is like all over the place in those movies. It's not consistent at all. The Impossible Mission Force, the IMF personnel changes. Like there's just this lack of consistency, but it's kind of strange. Then starting with Rogue Nation, Christopher McClory takes over, and those are the movies that people are probably think of right now when they think of the higher end, higher octane, incredible stunts. Sort of the more recent ones are all the same director. So they kind of got like a cohesion thing going on. Anyway, I'm still watching those. My covert ops game that I'm running play by post, the characters are all done. And I'm now kind of putting together what the mission's going to be, etc. I already have opinions about that game, having been through character generation.
Well, I was going to ask, like, how much thought did you give to the system that you're going to run?
Only a little. Like I presented about 4 or 5 games to this group of players that I know, and we just picked one. So I presented Tiny Spies and Covert Ops and Operators and a couple of others. And we just settled on Covert Ops, and we're kind of like, let's put it in gear. Let's just get going. And the character generation process has been enlightening. I'll say that. I like the system, but I think there's some real flies in the ointment that I'm going to have to think about while I run it. So, and then I also finished a World War II episode of The Rest is Redacted, which was all about the covert assault on a Nazi heavy water production facility in Norway, Operation Gunnerside. Really good episode. It's the podcast we talked about last week, but it's just fantastic. Where like they parachute in, they land 30 miles from the site. They have to ski the whole way. The ski is chest deep in some cases. There are ski chases. Like it's amazing what happened in that mission. It's pretty cool. And then finally, this is a funky one that I just got into recently. I've been holding this in reserve as we've talked about, like our influences and all that sort of stuff. When we first talked about like, the fact that maybe I like Austin Powers and Get Smart and you don't, and that sort of thing. He's rolling his eyes right now, folks. I stumbled across this French series of spy films that more recently are spoofs. I think the original ones are not spoofs. So there's a series called OSS 117, 88 novels written by Jean Bruce from the 40s through the 60s. And then his wife takes over, his widow takes over, and she writes more than 100 more of these stories well into the 1980s. And the French have produced like a dozen films or something all through the 50s and 60s and a couple in the 70s. They were doing these films. And I think they're a little more either straight ahead or they're a little more like Bond-alikes kind of thing. But more recently in the 2000s, they are sort of spoof-like films. And I watched the first one. It's actually the middle of the three because it's the only one I could find easily last night. And I'll report back once I've seen more of these things. But holy crow. I mean, you know what? I'll just hold my tongue. There's some questionable content in these movies since they're French. So that's all I'll say. Are you familiar with that series, the OSS 117?
Not even a little.
117? Yeah, neither was I until I stumbled across them, and they're a whole thing for sure. Yeah, so that's me. What have you been up to?
So I've been listening. I've been listening to The Hunt for Red October, which is pretty decent. I mean, I don't know.
Jack Ryan.
As good as the movie, I guess. I don't know how many Clancy audiobooks I'm going to listen to. Some of them I have Some of All Fears. Yeah, that's cool, man. But I don't know if we'll see. The rest is classified. Hunt for Bin Laden. I've been on a Bin Laden kick. So
really?
I think the rest is classified. The podcast I was listening to, then I stepped away from it for other things. And then I came back to it.
It's good, man.
Yeah, and I came back to where they started the Bin Laden hunt, basically. And that, I think it's like 5 or 6 episodes. At the same time, I was watching the one video on Netflix about the hunt for Bin Laden. So I feel as though I could be a CIA analyst on Bin Laden from listening to those two shows.
You've been briefed thoroughly.
I mean, I think I could fill the shoes of Leon Panetta and, probably if I had known all that information ahead of time, I probably would have been able to find him too.
I'll have to listen and so I can keep up with you.
Right. Yeah. Now it's getting into, what was it, the last episode that I was looking to listen to. It was kind of an interesting one. I have it up on my podcatcher right now. Oh, Roswell is the next.
New Mexico.
Two shows on Roswell and
UFOs, cool.
Which will be interesting because this is, it's not overly espionage, but it seems like you get government, anything secretive, it's always
yeah.
Oh, that'll be fun. I need to prep for Top Secret Vignette is on my list to do and have yet to start, so that'll be maybe the next episode. It can't be that hard. I just got to make up the characters and then. You need to go back and listen to the last 3 episodes to understand how hard it's going to be? Is that what you need to do? I think, if I remember correctly, creating a character in the past wasn't that
not that bad.
Yeah,
especially if you ignore half the book.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, you know what? I think I told you this. I'll help you out. I'll make a character. You don't have to do it all, man.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure there's an early 80s supplement that has a bunch of pre-gens in it. So we could hunt that down somehow.
Sure.
Right. We can do it if we have trouble, but I'll create a spreadsheet to create my character. Like I used to do in the 90s I used to use Quattro Pro to do all of my hero and GURPS and all those character sheets. I built my own because they all had various, math functions throughout. Like, this is an average of these 3 stats plus 100 divided by whatever. So the spreadsheets were the way to go there. So I'll create the character. So I'll alleviate that load off of you, but you have to figure out just how rules is written it's going to be, my friend.
It's going to be per book.
Okay. I plan on having like an ankle holster, and I'll do some hip shooting, and
yes,
I'm going to be waiting a lot. Yes. Yes.
I better
So
tell
you
you the
better
right
get
edition.
ready.
I better tell you the right edition so you don't decide to wrestle.
Very true. That's right.
And then you and I both, by the time this is out, will probably have it will probably have come and gone, but we'll be going to Gamehole Con in Madison.
We will.
Do you have any modern set games that you are going to be partaking in?
I do. You're testing my memory here, but I may have more than one. I think I just have one. So Sean is in a backhanded way here getting mad at me for dropping his game at Gamehole. So I was in a Shadow Dark game. You know what I didn't realize? I didn't realize that Mirko was also in that game.
Yeah.
Because the Gamehole freaking interface doesn't tell you who you're playing alongside, which I don't like.
I do.
Like
the
yeah,
GMs do,
I know.
But not you. Yeah.
The GMs do, but the players don't. So I could have had a lot of fun with a fellow BSer, somebody else I really like to play with, but I didn't realize he was in the game. So I dropped it with the intention being I'm going to find myself some more modern games because I was signed up for a bunch of like Swords and Wizardry, Shadow Dark, like a bunch of fantasy, right? I did find one. It's not in the same slot, but I did find one on the Sunday, which is a top secret game by, oh my heavens, I'm going to have to look it up. I'll tell you what, I'll look it up while you're getting us something on the Sitrep or something like that, because I forget the guy's name. I think he's the author of the adventure. I'm gonna have to look it up. But I on Sunday morning I am in a top. Sorry, let me dial the knob more detail here. It's a top secret New World Order game, not SI, not the original game. It's the newer version of the game that came out 5 years ago or whatever it was in the teens, I think, something like that. And I think you're in one of those too, right?
I'm in a Delta Green scenario, Convergence, which will be interesting because I'm. Oh, don't tell anybody, but I'm running it right now.
I'm going to come by the table, a bag of popcorn. So, Sean, are you going to be able to separate your GM knowledge from your player knowledge in this game? Is that how it's going?
I feel as though I'm a consummate professional at the table, whether I am behind the screen or in front of it, and I will be able to separate those two personas. But I will tell you this, nobody's going to get stuck in that game. You're welcome. You're welcome, Game Master.
Why don't we go to the post office? How do you know they go to the post office? We should go to this warehouse across town that I never heard of. Trust me, we should go there.
I mean, and then I also have Knights Black Agents with Mr. Ken Hite.
Oh, that's right. I knew that. That's awesome.
And I think Hoos is in that game, maybe. No, he's in the Convergence game. Hoos is a friend of ours. I'm in a game with him for, I think, one of those, maybe Convergence.
Sweet.
Yeah. So that's
I
two.
I think he's in the Delta Green game.
Yeah.
I think he is.
So that's the two modern games that I'm in.
So there weren't that many on offer, to be honest.
There's not.
Right?
Next year it'll change.
I think
we'll be running 20 modern 20 modern games.
Oh boy.
Harrigan. And that's just Harrigan 20 and me 20. That'll be 40 games.
They're going to be really high quality, really long.
Top notch.
15-minute sessions come to the booth. Oh dear.
So
there is one more sort of person that we know, Chad. Well, I'm forgetting Chad's like Gunderman. He's also playing in a top secret New World Order game I know that's happening earlier in the weekend than the one that I'm playing in. So we can tap him as well to see how that goes, and because that might be by the author. I don't remember. Probably not. The author lives on the East Coast, so probably not. Yeah. All right. We should roll on
to Sitrep. Sitrep, where we share links and events and whatever we want to bring to your attention.
Let me go first, please. Let me go first. I got nothing, Sean. I got nothing. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
over to you, buddy.
Well, I appreciate your effort. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have two this week. First one is The Spies That Death Forgot. This is a Forged in the Dark espionage RPG. So I might have to put that on the list to look at because I'm interested in through this, the adventures, if you will, of this podcast, I am interested to find out what game systems really work well for espionage. And I find that many are very trad. GM, percentile, GM, D20, GM, players, right? Forged in the Dark is a little interesting. I'm wondering if that facilitates a good espionage game because there's flashbacks and being able to change things in the moment based on its heisty background and mechanics. So,
frankly, if you like Forged in the Dark games, because they are a kind of an acquired taste, and some people love them, some people like them less, it's a perfect setup. It's that whole, like, you're in the middle of the mission. You didn't have to do all the planning. You didn't have to do all the setup and in the moment you do the flashbacks, and it has a bunch of mechanics for capers and heists and that kind of thing. So it should work well. Actually.
I would think so.
I'm kind of curious to see it for sure. Good find.
And then the second one is Robert Morton, which is not his Blue Sky handle, but I'll have a link to it in the notes. I followed him I just did a search on espionage on Blue Sky or something, and his name popped up, and he's got a bunch of posts that are all kind of all over the place. And some of it is historic espionage tales. There is like recent news of espionage or operations that involve, other countries' forces and the U.S.'s. But he's also an author. So he's the author of Corey Pearson CIA spy thriller series. But he posts a ton of stuff on Blue Sky that is very espionage oriented. So I just got to tune into him. And if you find some of his books interesting, go ahead and check those out. I've not read any of his books. So that's all I have.
Sweet. Tell you what, I have found the name of the guy running the top secret New World Order game. You might know it. Scott Kongable. Do you know him?
I do not offhand.
Okay. So I've seen his name on a couple of, I think, New World Order adventures. Because one thing that New World Order has done is they are relatively prolific at putting out adventures and whatnot for the game. And I think Kongable, if that's how you pronounce his name, Kongable, however you say your name, Scott, apologies. I'm kind of excited to see what it's like. Should
Excellent.
Be good.
Very cool.
Yeah, nothing else from Sitrep on me.
All right, excellent. Let's move on to Encrypted Comms. We do, and we have one this week from a special listener. So that was Jason from Nerds Variety Podcast, if you're interested in checking out his show. Thanks, Jason, for the call-in and letting us know that you're listening. And, would have been interesting to hear a little bit about how you thought about Top Secret New World Order, how it compares. But for the sake of time, I appreciate the short message. So thank you.
So I think we've mentioned Jason Connolly at least once before on the podcast. I think maybe it's on the editing room floor, Sean, but Jason has said on his own podcast, on that Nerds RPG Variety podcast that he does, that he likes the original Top Secret more than the other Top Secrets.
Oh,
and with you and I having just plowed through that and emerged on the other side bloodied and bruised, I'd like to talk to him a little bit about that to understand his perspective.
I would like him to run our vignette, actually, and then see if his opinion has changed or not. But
wait a minute. You're shirking your duties.
I am shirking my duties, but I play. I would be a participant. And yeah,
that's true.
He might know the rules better than I do, which is not probably very hard, but I would be interested to know if he's like, when's the last time he's played and how solid he knows the rules.
So I'll tell you what, by the time he called, because we have this sort of staggered release to first to patrons and then to the public, he probably has not heard us discussing Top Secret. So we'll probably get another call from him once we have it in a headlock and we're starting to apply the punches and whatnot. He'll probably call it and say, "What are you talking about? It's the best game ever, and here's why."
Yeah. The downfall too. Like our public releases are like 3 weeks out almost. So, yeah. But thanks, Jason. As always, good to hear from you. I appreciate it. So let's get into da-na, da-na, da-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na. I have to do that because I can't get the music and put it in here because we'll get flagged. And I don't have
even just snippets, little short snippets.
Strike.
You couldn't just have the blast, like the da 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 da, and then you couldn't just do that.
I think we just covered it though. Probably better.
It's so good,
and
it's so good. Yeah,
we couldn't. Yeah. So we had things planned. We're like, okay, and we put up a poll, which patrons will be like.
They'll be mad.
What's the point of voting if you guys are just going to do whatever the hell you want anyway?
Our voices are meaningless.
That's right. That's right. So we put out a poll to find out what episode or what game we should cover next. And one of them was like Mercenary, Spies, and Private Eyes. And then that other one was James Bond / Classified. And I'm thinking to myself, our next episode is episode 7. We cannot do any other game.
It's not episode 7. It's episode 007.
Dun-dun, 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 dun-dun. Yeah. So anyways, James Bond 007, or better known as role-playing in Her Majesty's Secret Service.
I don't think it's better known as that. That is the subtext, man.
Basic game. The complete basic game is sitting here in my hands, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. I made him buy it.
Have you played? Okay, so let's start out. Have you played this game before?
I have. So yeah. I mean, throughout our discussions here, we'll talk about our experiences with it, right? This is one of many games that in the 80s I bought when I saw it at the local shop and was like, what is this? When I was either getting itchy about not wanting to run AD&D, or just seeing neat things in the shop, right? I don't remember the timing, unfortunately. I bet it was actually the latter, because I think this came out in 83, which we're going to cover. So I think it was early enough that I probably was, quite happily running the AD&D campaign for my friends. But it was James Bond. And if you could flip through this book, and we'll get to this as well, it's so well laid out and looks just so like crisp and snazzy that I probably just snapped it up. I think to answer your question, I think I ran 2 sessions before my players were like, nope, we want to play D&D. And part of that was probably the complexity of the system, which is it's not complex. It's not crazy, but there's some complexity versus rolling a D20, right? And part of it may have been just, I don't know, maybe the way I was running it, maybe I wasn't doing a good job with it. I don't know. What about you? What experience do you have with this game?
Never played it. Never owned it. I never owned it until like a week ago.
Crazy.
Well, and here's, I think, why. People used to rave about this, and they still do to this day. And I found it so offensive because I was a top secret guy. And I'm like, I don't want to play James Bond because I don't want to play as James Bond. And if that's who you play in that game, I'm out. And Top Secret is the bomb because we're not playing it by the rules as written. And it's a great game. So I never played it, and I always had kind of poo-pooed it and didn't realize, I think over time, how real popular it was.
Yeah, we'll talk about. So let me say this: I don't know that we're going to go into a 3-episode breakdown of every single game we talk about, like we did with Top Secret. Right? Top Secret required some unpacking. Yeah,
It scared
you know
you.
what I'm talking about.
It
John.
scared you. It's shocked you now. You're like, whoa, I'm not doing 3 episodes again.
Well, it just took a lot. It took a lot to unpack not just the rules, but the history and all that sort of stuff. So for this game, here's what I proposed, and you and I have talked about this at least a little bit. Like, I think we should talk today about the history of the game, the publishing of it, the popularity, and up to, like, let's not get deeply into the mechanics, which we will do next week, right?
That is the deep dive format that we would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to talk about. And I think one of the really interesting things about this game is indeed it was published for a very short period of time. And in fact, you know what? Do you mind if I go into some particulars, some stats?
Please.
After I cover this, maybe we'll pivot a little bit, because this game gets a lot of love now. If you go back to various either Usenet discussions in the 90s and 2000s or Reddit or wherever now, people point to this game as like one of the greatest espionage games that's ever been written, right? And it's kind of this moment in time, which is kind of amazing. So created and published by Victory Games in 1983. It's 160 pages long. It saw 2 types of releases. It has a basic set, which was a box, and it had a basic game, which is just the book. The book is what Sean and I both have. Back in the day, I didn't buy the box. The box had some charts and some chits and those sorts of things kind of accompanying it as well. It won awards in 83, and some of its adventures won awards in 84, and it was really popular. It immediately dethroned Top Secret as the #1 spy game, which maybe was why young Sean had his tidy whities in a bunch, perhaps. Almost 100,000 copies were sold, and they did all this between 1983 and 1987 when they lost the license. So it only ran for like 3.5, not quite 4 years, I think, something like that. And they put out a ton of crap in that time. So in that 3 or 4 year period, they put out 11 adventures and 5 supplements, along with some other, like there's a board game, there's a few other little things that they did as well. So when they got the license, Victory Games was cranking on trying to capitalize on the license. And what many people will retrospectively look at and say one of the reasons why it sold so many copies is exactly because of the James Bond license. The same thing that drove you away as a kid saying, I don't want to play that character. I want to build my own. Well, we know now, and you know now from reading it, of course, you build your own character. You can play as Bond, and they include a lot of the characters from the movies. They stat them up. But the game is all about create your own character, whether they're a rookie or an agent or a 00 or whatever, right? That kind of thing. It was published in English, French, Spanish, and Japanese. And in those other locations, they swapped out the art in many cases. So there's a lot of different versions of this game floating around, even though it existed for such a short period of time. And I guess the last thing, I think I was going to cover this later, but I'll just throw it in now. What happened is at some point, WotC, Wizards of the Coast, acquires some fragment of Victory Games somehow. And in the early 2000s, they almost tried like a resurgence, bring the game back. They were about to publish a From Russia with Love module, but it never got off the ground. I think there were rumors that it's floating out there somewhere in PDF, but I've not seen it, haven't been able to find it. But it's this game is one of those curiosities where when the IP gets yanked, it just dies, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about Victory Games? Because I think that's an interesting story of its own, on its own.
Yeah, I mean, people are probably wondering who the hell is Victory Games, because they're not around anymore, and they didn't publish, I don't think, anything as Victory Games in the RPG space past James Bond. They were a subsidiary of Avalon Hill Game Company, which was created in 1982. So not long afterwards did they get the James Bond rights to put out the RPG. And Avalon Hill Game Company was formed from a core of SPI, which was Simulations Publications Incorporated design employees. So they're following the family tree of all these designers and where they came from and what companies bought who and took them over. So SPI had it specialized in war games. That's what they were known for, and that were more complex and more exacting simulations. I actually had an SPI game I bought solely on like the coolness of the cover, which was like Air War, and it's got like an F-15 fighter banking on it, and it looks so kick-ass. And it's an art. It's not a photograph. It's like artwork, and I'm like, oh, I'll buy that.
Is that Air War or is that Air Superiority?
No, I think it's. I don't know. I thought it was Air War, but I could be wrong.
It probably is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they also did other ones like War in the Pacific, the campaign against Imperial Japan, Pacific War, the struggle against Japan, and then that was more Avalon Hill Game Company that had normally published like typical war game stuff. That was, something equivalent to. Well, I think there's plenty of them now out there that are. There's all kinds of them.
A renaissance now for war games for those types of like chit and counter kinds of war games. When I dug into this, Sean, I found it's really interesting. And Avalon Hill, in fact, goes way back. They're back all through the 70s. They're making stuff, maybe even into the 60s, right? And SPI, what I used to call Spy, but I think is now I know better that they called themselves SPI when they were still around. All these war game companies were watching what TSR was doing with D&D. Because TSR was also a war game company, but they pivoted and it became wildly popular. So many of the war game companies were watching the smaller competitor disrupt and innovate, and they were trying to kind of mirror or model it. And quite frankly, their sales were dropping. Like the war game sales were going down as the RPG sales were going up in the hobby. So SPI tried various things to stay relevant, and they didn't, and they were eventually disbanded or picked up by TSR. TSR bought SPI, and what Avalon Hill did was they swooped in and they picked off a few key people, developers, who would help them get their RPGs off the ground, and that, I think, is part of the design team that came over and worked on James Bond. So their former SPI, the rest of those SPI wargame guys went to TSR. It's kind of crazy how it all went down. The quote that I have that I think sums it up really well is one of Avalon Hill's competitors, SPI, produced war games that were more complex and realistic simulations than those that Avalon Hill published. In '82, after SPI's assets were acquired by TSR, Avalon Hill hired away some of their design staff and formed them into a subsidiary company, Victory Games. And you're right, Sean. Victory Games, I mean, they were all in on James Bond for that 3 or 4 year period, but they were producing war games too, and some of those war games actually won awards. So it was a really skilled little design team. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this is because I think we saw with Merle Rasmussen and Top Secret like a love for the genre, and it's just drenched in tables that are emulating what Merle thought spy novels and fiction should have, right? With James Bond, you see a high functioning game system design team just hitting on all cylinders. Like, we know how to make games already, and we're going to happen to make a spy game that has this amazing license attached to it. So it was kind of a moment in time spark, I think, which is, I mean, Sean, now that you've seen the two games, James Bond is 100 times the game that Top Secret is. Would you not agree?
I mean, I haven't gotten to the table yet, but it does seem to read a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
I'll admit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would go on to be Avalon Hill Game Company, which folds in 1989. Poof. And so,
yeah.
Yeah. And also, although a few titles already well into the production cycle appeared with the Victory logo after that date, which is kind of interesting. So
it is.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about the staff who were involved in the Bond project?
I want to go into the staff only because it's like, who would they be and what did they do and did they contribute to other things in the past? And we didn't really get into it with like Top Secret necessarily. We did mention Merle and Alan Hammock as kind of the two people behind that team. And then, but Top Secret SI, different. Like Merle was not involved in Top Secret SI. And so with the folks at Victory Games, Gerard Christopher Klug was credited for game design. development and project coordination. He was the designer referred to in the dedication. Gregory Gordon and Neil Randall handled game development. Robert Kern served as the systems development and James Bond savant. And then the rules editor was Michael E. Moore. And I don't think that's the Michael E. Moore. I don't know if that's the same Michael E. Moore that goes on to join Dragon.
That's Roger Moore.
That is Roger Moore. You're right. I apologize.
And not the Roger Moore in a Bond episode. I don't know how many connections we can have here, but different Roger Moore.
Yeah. I have to admit, I don't know how many of these individuals went on to do many, many, many more games. And it could be that they went into, and maybe they came from the wargaming space and they are probably more known in that space. I don't know. I'm very unfamiliar with some of these personalities.
Yeah, I don't know a single one of them either. But that's probably my ignorance more than anything. These guys might be storied game designers from the 70s, right? And the early 80s. So one of the things flowing on here that is interesting is that this team had some real obstacles in their way. They had some real challenges or impediments that they had to overcome, right? And the first one being, and this I read in doing the research for this episode, I've read an article that actually interviewed, you're saying Klug, K-L-U-G is the guy's name, right? What's his first name? Sorry.
Well, it's Greg Christopher, or Gerard Christopher. I'm sorry. Not
Gerard.
Gerard Christopher Klug.
Gotcha. Klug. So Klug comes to the table with, his new boss is saying, you got to develop this RPG. The espionage space is not very crowded like the fantasy space is. There's a bunch of science fiction games. There's only Top Secret that's out there, right, at the time in 82. And he has an immediate decision to make, which is, wow, the books are very different from the movies, like quite different. And in my research for this, I've come to discover just how different. So different, in fact, than when they tried to turn the books into movies. They had to do a whole reset on no, we're not going to make these books into movies as is, even though many of the names are the same between Fleming's books and the movies. They actually had a whole set of meetings and design processes around what should Bond look like on the screen. And he is not like the Bond in the books even. So the Bond in the books does not say Bond, James Bond. He doesn't do that all the time. Right? He doesn't, at least in the early books, he doesn't have a shaken, not stirred martini every time. So the suaveness that they bring to the movie and that, I don't know, they're just the sleek and the romantic part of the spyness is not in the books. So Klug decides, and probably influenced by the IP owners, I would think, to lean towards the cinematic side of things, right? This is interesting because later in the Retroclone Classified, they introduce a scale that tells you, I think I mentioned it in the podcast before, and I think I incorrectly attributed it to the James Bond system, the whole realistic, adventurous, cinematic, and heroic. That's Classified that does that. Bond, the original game, the James Bond 007 game, comes down firmly in it's cinematic. Right. And he even says in the foreword, Klug does, he says in the foreword, where I had to make a decision, I lean towards the movies. Right. Now, having said that, he also talks about striking a balance. So it's kind of cool that he's in this sort of middle space. It's neat. There is one thing that's missing from the James Bond 007 game. At least one big thing. Sean says two things. So let's find out. What are they, Sean?
So the big bad organization they cannot use, and they can't use the name of the head of that organization.
Yes.
And if you've guessed, we'll give the listener a little bit. If you guessed SPECTRE, that you would be correct, and Blofeld.
Yep, they are not in the game.
But everything else, like Felix Leiter, is in there as an NPC.
Oh, there's tons of characters that are in there. Yeah. So do you know that story? Do you want me to tell that story? You want to tell a story as to why they can't use SPECTRE? It's really interesting. So remember I mentioned that they had these design discussions when they were looking at the movie franchise, and Fleming's already written a whole bunch of books by then, but he's still writing the books when they start the movies, right? What's the best way to describe this? where's the guy's name? 1 second. I got to find him. Kevin McClory. So there's the producer of the Thunderball movie. And even though Thunderball is not the first Bond movie, I think it's number 3 or number 4. I'm trying to remember. I think it's number 3. Isn't it Dr. No and then Russia with Love and then Thunderball, or is Goldfinger before Thunderball? I don't remember.
I do not recall.
Yeah, we'll check that. Long story short, even though McClory isn't involved in like the very first movie, he's involved in these early discussions about how to take the franchise and turn it into movies, right? And they developed Thunderball, the movie, with his involvement. And that movie gets into some significant stuff around SPECTRE and around Blofeld, etc., which Fleming hadn't written about fully yet. So when they, I forget if the movie's already out or if, I think it's after those discussions, Fleming writes Thunderball, writes the book, but it's not just his ideas. There's a few things from McClory and others. So I can't pretend to know all the ins and outs. I haven't read deeply about this, but I do know that basically when they got down to SPECTRE and Blofeld, McClory was like, I have some stake in that IP and, you have to pay me as well. So in the end, they decide to skip it. And what do they replace it with, Sean? Because they do include a world-spanning villain organization.
The name is Tarot, I think, right?
Tarot.
Yep. Yeah.
Technological ascension, revenge, and organized terrorism.
Which is probably not much different than SMERSH.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Do you remember what SMERSH means?
It's like subversion, something.
Oh, it's the blending of 2 Russian words. There's 2 Russian words that are smashed together, so it's not an acronym.
I thought
At least
it was.
to my, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to look it up. I believe it means death to spies.
That's
in Russian.
SPECTRE, no?
In Russian. No, I think that's SMERSH.
One or the other is an acronym.
SPECTRE is totally an acronym.
Maybe that I got it mixed up with SPECTRE.
I don't know. We better do some research on this for this show next time.
What are we doing here?
I don't know.
Okay, everybody, we're going to stop right now. Check out the next episode where we come back and tell you what's going on.
So long story short, I think SMERSH was real. Like SMERSH was an actual Russian part of the before the KGB and all that sort of stuff.
Yes. And
And that's what Fleming writes about in the early Bond books. And then SPECTRE comes in later, I think because of these conversations that he had, right? That sort of thing. I do think both SMERSH and SPECTRE, I'll have to double check this. I think SPECTRE gets introduced in a later book, like in 86 or 87, maybe in the villains book. I'll have to go back and check that. Sean's searching right now.
Can you hear my keyboard clickety?
I can.
I'll edit that.
I can. It's fine. It's all good. So while you search, I will say this about Tarot. Many people who reviewed the James Bond RPG say that Tarot is actually a cooler villain organization than SPECTRE is. It's just not as familiar to people, right? But the way they name their agents, and there's just a bunch of things about Tarot that are pretty neat. What are you finding?
Well, of course, I come up with the SPECTRE, the 2015 movie. But
Yep.
I don't know if it's going to say what it means. Plot. Shoot. I can't remember. I don't know. I can't see it. It doesn't come up.
All right.
It doesn't hit me in the face.
Other side of the coin, SMERSH is an acronym, but it's from the Russian phrase. I'll never be able to say this because it's in like Cyrillic kind of thing. But it does mean death to spies.
Okay.
And it was a real Soviet counterintelligence organization founded by Joseph Stalin during the Second World War to eliminate German spies. So there you go.
There you go. And SPECTRE is some of these nerds that find us will be like, you know, and if you know, bonus, special executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion.
Revenge. I love it. There's SPECTRE.
Yes.
There you go. So one is made up and one is not.
Right.
In the end. And Tarot is another made up one that they have to use because there's these IP. And there's actually, there's not not a lot of value in getting into it, but there's actually several IP agreements they have to make with different people who own different parts of the franchise and that kind of thing. But they navigate. But here's one thing that blew my mind, Sean. They don't start this project until 1982, right? And in this interview with Klug, he talks about how difficult it was dealing with the IP owners and how many approvals they needed and going back and forth. And I'll talk about the adventures here in a minute and how they got involved in the adventures that they were going to put out. They did this in like 6 months. Like, it didn't take long at all in the grand scheme of things. They had the game out by the summer of 83, right? And they didn't start work until 82. And they got all the design done, all the art done, all of the IP like checked off with a couple of different bodies. I mean, that with a property that's like hugely popular. So kudos, man. They did some amazing shit.
Yeah, I would have to ask like Modifius or Free League if their negotiations, or even with the Star Wars RPG that Edge now has and Wizards has owned before, how easy it has been to negotiate those IPs.
Yeah. I mean, maybe some cases it's easy if you give them the big cut. And you know what? If we fast forward just a little, and we're still not done with the challenges that the design team had, but if we fast forward a little to why they lost the license, it's not clear. Some people say Avalon Hill, Victory Games, wanted a bigger cut. And those designers and the game company says actually it was the IP owners who wanted a bigger cut. So it's not clear. I've never seen a really good breakdown of exactly what happened. But the fact of the matter was, after 3.5 or 4 years, suddenly a very successful, very popular game vanishes from the market. And that's partly why a lot of folks that you and I know in the gaming and BS or the BS Landia community, why they don't love IP games, because they have this fragility where it's like, oops, lost the license. Now, I mean, Conan's one of the best examples. Lord of the Rings is a great example, where these, you especially if it's a game that you love, you're like, yeah, keep making content for it. What? Wait. Oh, maybe the best is actually Marvel. Like, Marvel has jumped around like crazy, right? And many people believe, if you research deeply, that Marvel heroic role playing, the Cortex game, is like, it's a gem of a game, and it suffered the same fate as Bond, but even faster. I don't think it even got maybe one supplement, if that, and then done. And now we have a different Marvel game that's out right now, which, mark my words, will not last. There's going to be a different Marvel game 5 years from now, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe. I only say maybe because Marvel is putting that out, not a game company.
Oh, then I stand corrected.
Yeah, maybe
that will
that's a
change
Marvel
it.
initiative. Yeah, that's not a third party.
Yeah, that's
so
unfortunate.
Matt Forbeck, we can talk to him at GameholeCon about that, because he's the head.
Okay.
He's the driving force behind that game.
I know you say he's a good guy.
He is.
I just don't love that system.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I don't have much experience with it, but IP address, it's IP, Star Wars, Star Trek, same thing.
Yeah. All right. So lastly, the adventures presented a challenge. So the fact that they had to figure out movies or books, where do we focus? They couldn't use some of the property in the book. The adventures were interesting because they wanted to leverage all this content they already had, right? So why not put out adventures that are around Goldfinger? Put out Dr. No, put out Live and Let Die. Why wouldn't you do that, right? Well, they sat back and were like, everyone knows these stories. These fans know what happens in these stories. And we all know as players, it can be hard to separate that knowledge and still keep things interesting, right? So they developed not a system, but they developed a methodology for changing key pieces of the adventures in terms of locations, characters, plot devices. So they were thematically the same. I think, Blofeld's or Goldfinger is still trying to destroy gold and become rich because he's got all the gold in the world kind of thing, but it's not Fort Knox necessarily, right? That he's trying to destroy. Those are the flips that they tried to make. And this is where the intellectual property owners came back in and were like, whoa, what are you doing changing our stories kind of thing? So they had to go through rounds of discussion with them to get them to understand how these games worked and why they needed to sort of switch it up. So yeah, pretty interesting challenges they had to overcome as they got the game off the ground.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the designer, be like, okay, great. Fine. Now what are they going to do?
Yeah. One last thing that Klug said in the interview that I thought was really cool, and that I don't think a lot of designers necessarily do, and they should. He was reading all the books while he was designing, and he was stopping and making sure the mechanics could model the fiction that he was reading about. And he would stop reading and model and then go back to keep reading, which I think is pretty cool. And which is why we end up with seduction mechanics and chase mechanics and torture mechanics and all kinds of stuff in this game. Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
There's a core design philosophy here, right?
There is.
That makes this game a little different than D&D and a lot of the other games that are out at the time. You have some good notes on this. You want to lead us through the discussion on
Be happy to.
What that looks like?
Yeah, and with James Bond, it distinguishes itself from other TTRPGs of its time and even today for the most part. And it's deliberately, they say it's deliberately designed in the favor of the players. Mm-hmm. They actually have a quote, I think, from one of the designers in the game that says, "What good is it being James Bond if the game says you will fail rather than succeed?"
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to win. I'm going to win this game.
Competent spies.
That's right. Checkbox.
Yep.
One of the elements, anti-grimdark. So the game world is explicitly described as the exciting world created by Ian Fleming, which is a bit more fantastical than our own, where the good guys always win, or at least break even. And again, going to what Harrigan had mentioned about leaning towards more of the movies than the books. Protagonist focus. So the rules emphasize that the player characters are agents of MI6 and should never, quote unquote, should never take a backseat to any NPC or act as a mere caddy or messenger, end quote. So the other one would be encouraging boldness. So players are expected to develop confidence in their decision-making, even acting contrary to orders if they feel it is necessary, as a bold style of play has proven most effective. There's actually a blurb I make note, I think this would be the time to put it in there, is that you are actually penalized, I believe, in experience points if you keep going back to headquarters.
I don't think I've seen that. I need to read that more carefully. Cool.
I could be wrong.
We'll dive in.
Stop calling M. Just do the job. Like they're encouraging the person to make a judgment call on the spot. Needs to happen. Let's do it.
Well, if you think about the movies, it's the reverse. Usually they're like, where the hell's Bond? He hasn't checked in. Where is he now? What's he doing in Istanbul?
Well, that's because he's taking the bull by the horns,
yeah,
Harrigan. He's
that's
not
right. That's
consulting with those goofballs in the office back in home office.
Right.
And then money is abstracted. So in a move to retain the flavor of the devil-may-care lifestyle of the movies, while reducing bookkeeping, characters never have to worry about money. MI6 pays them well enough to enjoy a Bond lifestyle, and all mission expenses are covered. Sign me up. Like, hey, per diem, like throw it out the door.
There's even a list of equipment that you can just have. But like they'll give you these things, right? And it includes some cool stuff, including like bugs and firearms and all sorts of stuff. And it's the special stuff that you have to like have reputation or whatever for. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now we've done deep dives for Top Secret, riveting episodes, I would say, explaining how things are derived and some of those details. But I think it's important as we do a 100-foot view of a game, of just some of the things that incorporate the actual game and that are maybe a little bit unique without going into the nuances and details. So if you'll allow me.
I will.
So the stats, strength, dex, will, perception, and intelligence. Sound familiar? A little bit different. They range from 1 to 15. We won't go into how they're derived, but 1 to 15. It's a percentile-based system at its core, but there is also an ease factor chosen by the game master, which, the quality, it goes into the quality of the result. So you have to roll a percentage and a target number, and then based on that, you cross-reference it on a table that with an ease factor, and that will tell you the degree of success.
Acceptable, good, very good, and excellent. One of the first times I think we're seeing this really mechanized in that, not just a 1, 2, 3 levels of success, but they're named, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Skills are fleshed out like spells in a fantasy book. So if you wanted to know what a skill does, it's got a little spell block a skill block in James Bond, which include base time, success, information, repair if it applies, and a paragraph and description for the skill. That was kind of interesting. So, example, interrogation, 18 hours, determined by the amount of info obtained, as indicated by the skill use chart. And then if any equipment is used, then there's, there would be repair. The repair time is 2 hours. And then there's a brief description about what interrogation means. Everybody starts at rookie, maybe, of course, unless you are a game master, that's like everybody can start at 00 level, but usually start at rookie, then you go to agent, then you earn the 00. And there's also ranks that the bad guys have. So I did not get into that. I think, what is it like? I don't remember the bad guys' ranks. Do you?
Nor do I. But we'll get into that next episode.
Yeah,
I didn't. I'll be honest. I didn't look carefully at that stuff yet. I was trying to get the overall impressions. Yeah. Right.
Surviving inescapable traps. So competency, and they wanted Bond to have the ability to, if he or she, the character's in a pickle, to be able to get out of that. And they have hero points. So each one is, you're awarded 12, and you can spend them to influence the world around you and essentially, withstand some plot armor. So it is the time when you're tied up and you're like, or you need to get into a room and it's like, I don't have the lock pick. Oh, I have it in the heel of my shoe. And then you spend a hero point. Which the bad guys also get something equivalent. They're called survival points, but it's all used defensively, not offensively. And it's usually to stop players from mowing down these bad guys willy-nilly, especially like the big bad evil guy. Like because you all know, like I did with Harrigan's Outcast Silver Raiders, bad guy at the end, I kill him. Well, wait, hold on a second. No, I charge in, I kill him. No monologue, no explanation. I know that's the bad guy.
Yeah.
I go in there and kill him. Right.
You did do that.
So with this, you could spend survival points for your big bad evil guy to show up in the next film, if you will. And then weaknesses. So there are human failings, is what they're termed at character generation, to earn more points. So it's almost like, think of it as advantages, disadvantages in Savage Worlds, or hindrances and things of that nature. Actually, it's hindrances in Savage Worlds. And then I think GURPS, you can also take disadvantages to get more points to be able to build your character, because it is a kind of a point system.
An early version of this, right? I think Fantasy Trip has the point thing, and then Hero Games comes along and introduces advantages and disadvantages and weaknesses and those sorts of things. So this is early. This is like maybe the third game that does this, something like that. It's kind of cool.
So some of the examples: attraction to members of opposite sex, fear of spiders. The only one that is restricted, I don't know if you knew this, was sadism.
Yeah,
and that is
They're
reserved
trying to keep you heroic
for the baddies.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it has a unique chase mechanic, which we will go into when we do a deeper dive, where there's a maneuver that you pick. It's secretive, and then you divulge it at the same time as the opposition, and then the lowest bidder wins advantage. There is also fame points in the game, so the more famous, like when we first kicked off the podcast, we were talking about fame, and fame not being always the best thing to achieve because then you're recognizable. So this game incorporates that. There's a way to lower your fame by faking your death. Did you read about that mechanic, Harrigan?
You only live twice, man. That's where it's all comes from.
That's right. Well, and also if for some reason somebody realizes that you had faked your death, all that comes spiraling forward.
We briefly touched on it in an earlier episode. I think we were talking about Top Secret and its fame kind of thing. And I think we lightly mentioned that if you're tall or attractive, or basically if you stand out,
yes,
it's bad, right? It costs you fewer character points, but your recognizability, your fame goes up, and that's bad.
That's right.
Right. I mean, in the movies they give up where he just walks in and, I'm Bond and James Bond. Like, why would you tell them your name?
Right.
But hey.
And then there's no hit points in this system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Beautiful
called wound levels. So you could get shot, and there's a chart that you reference. One of the results on that chart is killed. But you can use a hero point
to lower the wound level.
Yes. And they stack,
It's really elegant. The whole thing is really a really cohesive system. It's not perfect, but it's a good game. I'll just say that.
So that's all I had for some of the high level mechanics.
Let me add to your high level pieces here. So just generally speaking, the layout really clean, like easy to read. It's not exactly a control panel layout like you would see these days where they're trying to put everything on a 2-page spread or a 1-page spread, but they do a really good job with the tables. The text is well written. The prose is really easy to kind of grok. They have a lot of use in the marginalia. In the margin, they'll have other notes to either the GM or something else that they want to kind of like comment on that they're talking about, specific examples, etc. Right? So they use good use of that. The chapters. So when I think of high level, Sean, what I think of is like I'm scrolling back here on my PDF so I can get to the table of contents. There are 20 chapters, and they are broken immediately into a player section and a GM section. The player section is intro, creating a character, skills, combat, chases, how to interact with non-player characters, gambling and casino life, fame, hero points, experience, and character growth, and equipment, right? So a lot of what Sean just talked about, each one of those, and sometimes the chapters are 2 or 3 pages long. They're very succinct. They do a great job of presenting them. And then the Game Master section has how to be a successful Game Master, how to use non-player characters, the non-player character encounter system, which Sean, while I read, get yourself a pair of D6s, please. I'm going to make you eat a roll in a minute here. Get a pair of D6s. And then there's a chapter on MI6. There's a chapter on James Bond as a non-player character, Sean, non. There's a chapter on Tarot, the villain organization. There's a chapter on allies and enemies of James Bond. There's one on thrilling cities, which leads to a later book called Thrilling Locations, which is a whole book about like cool places to go and adventure in. And then they end off with a little like adventure. And I think it's a solo sort of thing, right? The Island of Dr. No. Is it a solitaire?
I don't know if it's solitaire.
We'll have to look at that in a minute.
Not sure.
All right. You have your D6s out?
I do.
Okay. So I love the non-player character encounter system. And I think I talked about this very briefly before about how there were tables that you could use. So you're not encountering bands of wandering orcs. This is the first use I've seen, Sean, of a D66 table. You roll 1 D6 for what's called first die roll and a second D6 for a second die roll. So give me first of all, let's establish where you are. Let's say you're in Jamaica. Jamaica figures strongly in a lot of the Bond stories, right? It's hot. There's a hot encounter table, hot area. So give me a D66 roll. Tell me what you get. First die, second die. I'll tell you who you encounter.
A 51, sir.
51 is an employment offer. Interesting. I can then look up what this means, what employment offer means. Interesting. You can use a hero point to avoid this if you want to. If no hero point is expended, a shady contact offers the character an unsavory contract to eliminate a rival. If a hero point is expended, the offer is made by the major villain. Oh my God. So you can use it to like get in good with the people you're after. The character may accept the offer as a pretense for infiltrating the villain's operation. This may be done only once per major villain, even if the same villain returns in another adventure. So how cool is that? Like, it is totally emergent gameplay baked into these tables beyond 2d6 thugs show up, right? So forgive me here. Allow me this. Now it's cold. Now you're in Switzerland. Roll your d6s, two of them, and I'll tell you what you get, because the tables are a little bit different. It's pretty cool.
A 34.
Hotel operator. Let's see what that says. Where's my hotel operator? If the major villain is not yet aware of the characters, then this encounter is nullified. Otherwise, the hotel operator will inform the character of a peculiar message in which the caller confirmed that the character was staying at the hotel or other location, gave a peculiar laugh, using the word peculiar multiple times here, and then hung up, leaving no message. Some details about the voice of the caller may be obtained. I'm not going to keep reading this. Long story short, you've just revealed that the major villain now knows where you are, right? And you can kind of go on from there. So the tables are filled with, like, you can get arrested. There are newspaper stories. There are television stories. You can encounter soldiers, fellow agents, technicians. There's all. I just noticed you can encounter James Bond. He is, if you rolled a 12 on that table just now. So anyway, long story short, kind of like I felt about like Top Secret, like there's some inspired content here. These people are not going through the motions in making a game. They are thinking deeply about how to model a fiction, and it bleeds through the page for sure. I love the art all through this book, and it's all by James Talbot. And I think this book, along with, I would say, Games Design Workshop's Judge Dredd, and perhaps the Marvel Superheroes game, where everything looks so unified. Like, I think in Marvel Superheroes, those are some different artists in there, but they're all using the same Marvel House style. But in Judge Dredd, and the same thing is probably true for Judge Dredd too, actually. But in all three books, there's this unified, consistent look that has always drawn me. I just love that when it looks like the same person, the same style is used throughout. So I love the art. The layout's really interesting. You have the physical, right? So you're seeing it. It's not just a black and white book. It's a black and white book with big splashes of blue. For whatever reason, they chose this kind of not quite royal blue, but pretty medium blue. And they use it in a lot of chapter headers and those sorts of things. There were splashes of it throughout.
Well, I don't think it pertains to this game necessarily, but in the back in the days, I think some of the maps that they made were done in blue because the copiers couldn't pick it up. is what I heard. I don't know if that is an actual truth. But back in the day when D&D did blue maps, they did that. So
the photostat machines.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to like see the blue on it, I guess. But I don't know if that's true.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So finishing out my 10,000 foot view of this, the example of play is really cool because it includes both a narrative. So they have, Bond walked into the casino, right? And on the right-hand side, remember I mentioned they use the margins really well? Well, this margin's huge. They essentially divide the page in two. They had the table talk of the players and the GM and the mechanics going alongside the narrative, which I think is really neat. I like that a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's cool stuff, man. There are no real PDFs of this game, unfortunately. I'll say that. There are unofficial ones, just like there are with Top Secrets, where someone's taken a book. They've probably taken it apart and they've scanned each page, because I do have a scan of it as well as the real deal here next to me. And the scan is actually really, really high quality. It's good. Flowing out, Sean, I'm just going to cover a couple of notes, if you don't mind, on sort of not just the 10,000 foot view, but there's some quirky things that I just noticed. So this game has two different retro clones for it. One was called 00, which appears to have faded from the public lexicon. It's no longer a thing. I think it was an SRD more than it was a product. But the big one that's out there now, Sean and I have mentioned it, and we will be covering it, is Classified. And Classified is basically the same game system, cleaned up slightly. Couple of questionable design decisions they made. They changed the name Ease Factor to something else, which I don't like. But really what they're doing is removing the Bond IP from the game. right? There's an interesting thing on the bottom of page 2. Let me flick back there for a second. And this shows you back in 1983 how these companies were interacting with their fan base. So they didn't have a Discord, they didn't have a website. So at the bottom of the, this is the beneath where he, to Eric A. Dot for having enough faith in the designer to let him do the things the way he knew they had to be, the way he knew they had to be done, and yada yada yada, right? Where he dedicates the book. Below that, there's a little section that says, if you have any questions about the James Bond 007 game, send them to the address below, which is in New York City, by the way. Please phrase your questions so they can be answered with a yes or no response. Also be sure to include a self-addressed stamped envelope. Send your questions to Victor Games, etc. It's kind of more like a comic book, right? Where in the back of a comic book, there was letters to the editor, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's so of its time that just sort of jumped out at me. It's really, really pretty cool. What else have I got? I think that's it. Not sure. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I did have a question, and we already talked a lot about SMERSH and SPECTRE. And I think we had someone in the chat a minute ago when we were offline mention that SMERSH shows up in Casino Royale, which is of course the first book. And this is, not only that, but SMERSH is the villain in all those Fleming, those early Fleming works, because they're against the Russians basically. And this is the Russian anti-spy agency. I don't know why SMERSH is not in the James Bond 007 game. Like, there's this big thing around not including Spectre because they ran into the rights issues we talked about. But why isn't SMERSH in there? And I think I have to get a hold of it. I actually don't own this book. I don't own the Villains book. I think Villains might include both Spectre and SMERSH. So I'm going to try to get a hold of it here in the next little while, and we'll revisit that. That's a mouthful. Is there anything we want to revisit now that we've kind of covered the game, Sean, on your own experiences? Like, now that you've read it, anything you want to reflect on?
Nothing off the top of my head, no.
So I had a couple of little things that, remember I mentioned that I tried to run, I ran 2 sessions for my group. They wouldn't have it for whatever reason. Then we dropped it. Same thing, by the way, for Star Wars, for Gamma World, for Judge Dredd, for Marvel Superheroes, all those games. Like, I couldn't get them to stick. So I shelved the game, and I shelved it for years. Right. And then I kept it, but I haven't read it until I think a couple of years ago. I rolled it out when another friend of mine, and I mentioned him before, Alfred, this sort of, he's like a RPG prodigy, kind of like, I don't know where he gets his information, but he's got a lot of it. He's like, hey, I heard that the James Bond RPG has the most innovative chase rules of all time, and people really like that. So he kind of was like, tell me more about this game. And and I remember my response. I'm like, man, that game's got these crazy tables where you have to look them up. I had soured on heavier weight mechanics so badly that it sort of colored my view of I never want to go back to that James Bond game. It has that ridiculous percentile lookup table where you have to cross-reference and find out what level of success that you have, right? And when I have looked at this game more recently, I'm like, I'm wrong. Like, this game actually, it does have these charts. It is of its time, but wow, is this stuff ever knit together in a way that Top Secret just aspired to, where the Top Secret tables all felt like they're all neat in and of themselves, but they're all kind of random, and when do I use them and how do they fit together, and why is this one so different from that one? The Bond system has this backbone running through it of this skill system and this percentile roll, and the 4 levels of success, and everything is wired to that. It is a genius design. It's genius. So while you run Top Secret and we do our vignettes, I'll run James Bond.
Guy's getting off late. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. That's all I have to say about that, man. This is a watershed game. It's a landmark game.
Signing off, who is your favorite Bond?
Oh, definitely Connery. Should we put them in order?
Oh, I don't know. Sure.
Okay. I'll just say this. I'll just say Connery, but you go ahead. I'll think about it for a minute.
Well, mine's Connery as far as favorite goes. I'm biased. I've got, and my name comes from a particular.
Oh,
person.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you named after Sean Connery?
The spelling of my name for sure, but yeah.
Interesting.
That's my mother tends to bring that up in strange situations quite often, actually.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are similar in age. I'm a little older.
Right.
But I will tell you, growing up, I loved Roger Moore. Like, loved him. I now know, and having watched the movies with a little bit of a colder eye and a little more critical eye, I'm like, oh man, Connery is the man. Like that is James Bond. Roger Moore's movies are goofy. I mean, I still like those movies, and I have a lot of adoration for them because of when I saw them in my childhood. But the Connery movies are where it's at. What do you think about the new? What about Brosnan? What about Dalton?
I couldn't.
Go ahead.
I mean, I've seen them. I've watched them. I think they're okay, but it was. I think Daniel Craig in the modern era, would be. If you rank them, I would put Daniel Craig above Dalton and Remington Steele.
I think Craig is firmly number 2 for me. Like I like him a lot.
Yeah.
In those movies, and I think maybe I already told you this. I realized recently I have not seen the whole run of Craig movies. I think I got halfway through the second last one, SPECTRE, and what's the last one? Which finishes it?
Do You Only Live Twice?
No.
What is it? Are we wrong? What's going on here?
The last Craig movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, bring them up. We'll see. Point being, the same way I'm going through the Mission Impossible movies, I'm about to sit down and go through the Daniel Craig Bond movies.
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die is the last one. And I haven't seen a lick of that, I just realized. Usually I see them in the theater, and for whatever reason, I didn't see that one. And I need to change that. I need to rectify that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. The main reason is they don't release it for free on any streaming. It's always like you got to pay for these things or rent it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through those Craig ones, bam, 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 bam. I thought about doing the Remington Steele ones as well, and I've got some other friends I talk about this stuff. But I was out having lunch with the guy, and he's like, "Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to sit down and watch the Brosnan Bond films? Because I don't think you do."
Driving a tank out of Korea.
Yeah. And I remember kind of liking the first Timothy Dalton one and hating the second Timothy Dalton. So I don't know. They all deserve a revisit at some point.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps this up, eh?
Yeah. We heading for the hills here?
I think so. All right. So go Dark Agents. The next briefing will arrive when you least expect it. Signing off from Go Bag, I'm Sean.